Hi everyone, this is Community, and we are going to be doing an interview with Dylan Cottrill. Can you please give us an introduction about yourself? Short
Yeah,
introduction.
sure. That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, Tanisha. Yeah. So my name is Dylan Cottrill. I'm from Charleston, West Virginia. I started the West Virginia University Quantum Computing Club. So I studied physics and economics. I'm actually graduating the spring of 2021. And I've done a little bit of work with quantum dots. I'm actually going to head up to grad school in Stony Brook at Stony Brook University this fall. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, very exciting. We will start off with a few questions, just introductory questions. So, can you tell us what you're studying in school and why you chose to take this path?
Yeah, so I can tell you a little bit more about my area of specialty. So, I actually decided to study physics when I first came up to West Virginia University. I originally was interested in fusion, but I actually kind of started realizing that it was more that quantum computing was more interesting. I also have a degree in economics, so that's because I kind of realized the potential um, to change the world if you understand business and science. So, yeah, did I freeze? I'm sorry. Did my video
Oh,
freeze?
yeah, you did, but that's totally okay. Don't worry about it.
All right. So
Um,
yeah.
Great. And how would you describe yourself personally?
So I'm a lot of different things. I would say that the thing that I am the most is like ambitious. I'm extremely ambitious. I'm a scientist. I would say I'm solution oriented and I'm a pretty disciplined guy. I like to lead. So yeah, those all those words kind of describe me. I really think that of myself as a scientist and a leader first, though.
Great. So we understand that you're the president of the West Virginia Science Public Outreach Team. Can you give us a brief summary about what that does specifically for the STEM field?
Yeah. So the West Virginia Science Public Outreach Team was actually founded in collaboration with NASA and the Green Bank Observatory here in West Virginia. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but we actually train undergraduate students to give presentations to people K through 12 mostly, but anybody who will really listen or is interested on things like climate change, on things like space phenomena like the sun, and all kinds of different topics. And we've reached something like we've reached quite all across West Virginia and delivered over 850 presentations so far. So yeah.
So how would you describe your journey to becoming president of this team?
So when I was a sophomore, I got involved with one of my friends, and I worked closely with them to help bring the club to as many physics and science and STEM students as we could at West Virginia University. And I also wanted to get in touch with young people and talk about science. So the more time I spent in the club, the more I kind of realized how things were going on. And then when it came time to make a decision on who was going to lead the next year, I was the obvious choice because I had spent so much time trying to figure out how we can do it the best way.
Mhm. Great. So you mentioned before that you were the founder of the West Virginia University Quantum Computing Club. Oftentimes, college-made clubs are not carried out after several years. What steps have you taken to ensure that your club would be an enduring one?
So the biggest thing about like WVQC is that there aren't very many quantum computing organizations in West Virginia. I'm actually not sure of any others. So I don't think that there will be a huge problem with people being interested in the club. It seems like people can't get enough of it. When we first started putting advertisements out on the electronic banner system
Mhm.
for West Virginia University, we had something like 30 people join, and almost immediately. So we're growing quickly, And we have a lot of activities lined up for people. We have projects that we're working on or interested in getting funding to work on. And we have an excellent team lined up for next year.
Great.
So,
That sounds amazing. And what sparked your interest in quantum computing, and what age did you pursue this in?
so when I think I was a sophomore. Yeah, I tried to do a little bit of research before that, and it wasn't super exciting. I was tired of not really like feeling like the work that I was doing was impactful. And I heard about a professor at WVU. His name is Dr. Edward Flagg, and he's working on quantum dots. So quantum dots are um, these things to trap electrons, basically. And you can use these electrons hypothetically like a qubit. We're not actually there yet, but with the technology. But someday we hope to, use these quantum dots um, like for to create qubit to embody qubits. And so I heard about that, and I was very excited. He gave a lab tour, and I was in it, and I realized how interesting the work was. Like I saw people in the laboratory with their hands on the lasers and playing with the mirrors, and there was this cryo station. I'd never seen one before. It was cooling these these samples down to like 4.2 Kelvin. I thought that was just so interesting. So I ended up getting involved after that lab tour, and slowly started just falling in love with quantum computing until I realized like, wow, this is like a really huge field, and like I think that I'm pretty interested. I gave a presentation at the American Physical Society Mid Atlantic section in 2018, and I realized how uh, interesting there what other people were doing as well. So that's kind of a short story about how I got into quantum computing.
Mm-hmm. Likewise, as many others, I'm assuming. So, do you think that with your passion of quantum computing and all the accomplishments you've done over the past few years, where do you hope to be in the quantum computing field in the future?
So that's a really good question. I'm actually trying to figure out that answer myself right now. I feel happy to be one of the first people really pushing quantum computing at WVU. Um, I would say that there are more opportunities at other schools for quantum computing at the moment. So that's part of the reason why I decided to pursue a master's degree at Stony Brook, because there is a lot of people working on very interesting stuff up there. There's people working with superconducting qubits. There's people working with trapped ions. I think there's a lot of really good stuff going on at Stony Brook. So I, so in the next 2 years, I hope to get a degree, a master's degree, and then after that, I'm hoping that I have enough connections to work for a little bit in the quantum computing field. But as far as 10 years in advance, I'm not sure if I will be able to start a company, which is my goal, or I'll just stay in the field as an employee for a little bit. I kind of hope that I can start a company. If I'm going to be honest, that's the dream, is to own a company in the quantum information or quantum computing field. But right now, I don't know of any problems. So there's something I'm doing right now, and I hope that I'm going to be able to do it. When I'm in graduate school and when I'm in the quantum computing industry a little bit better, I making a what is it called? A list of things that bug me. So that's a really good way to start,
Mhm.
companies. You just make a list of the things that bother you every day, and then you might find one that you can eventually use to make a company. So when I get into the quantum information and quantum computing field a little bit more, whether that's at Stony Brook or as an employee at a quantum computing firm after, I'm just going to start looking around for things that I could solve and hopefully start a company.
Yeah, honestly, that's a really good approach for anyone in entrepreneurship or any kind of problem solving. That's a really good approach, which I'm sure many people appreciate. So, speaking of companies, quantum computing companies, if you could pick any one quantum computing company to join, which would you choose and why?
It's a tough one. I thought about that a little bit. I've been thinking about that for a little bit, and I I really think that it would be nice to work for maybe D-Wave. It would be cool to work for Cambridge Quantum Computing. Those two companies are excellent. Cambridge Quantum Computing, they do a lot of coding stuff, and I really like to code, so that'd probably be fun. They made like a compiler so that you can use. Have you heard of? I think it's called Ticket. Have you heard of
Oh,
Ticket? Yeah, that is an excellent piece of software. They basically just make it so that it's like a universal quantum computing programming
mhm.
compiler. It's excellent. And D-Wave is working on something pretty interesting. They're not quite quantum computers, but nonetheless, they're very interesting. They're working with quantum annealers, which is something that I will probably use this summer for just a side project that I have going with the co-founder of WVU Quantum Computing, Albert Nunez. He and I are hoping to do something pretty interesting with their annealers. So it's, but then again, Google also has shown a pretty good track record for generating qubits. Sycamore, that's really cool. I mean, it would be really interesting. I just don't know much about um, the hardware side of that, which is, I don't know. I'm really interested in both the hardware and the software, but yeah, so it's tough. It's tough to really say which one I'd like to be at, but I know that those three are very high up there.
Yeah, there are like a lot of quantum computing is a very vast field, as many could observe. So there's so many problems to be fixed. Speaking of those problems, what are some misconceptions you think people have about quantum computing?
The first big one is definitely people think they're going to replace their computers someday. That's not really going to happen. Your basic classical computers that use, conventional transistor bits, they're going to be around. Um, but what you can expect is you might see that computers someday will have a quantum processing unit, QPU. We have GPUs and CPUs. Maybe someday we'll have QPUs, and that's because quantum computing like machines will be useful for solving very special problems. So problems like involving random number generation and optimization. These really special problems that some engineers have to use a lot. So that's a huge misconception. Is people think that they're going to replace computers. They won't. Um, Another one maybe is yeah. I think that people kind of don't really understand quantum mechanics, so they don't really they kind of get nervous when they hear the word quantum. But they're not too much different than normal computers. They just kind of use different tools like superposition, entanglement. Um, so those are the two big ones. It's like people get scared of quantum. They hear quantum and they
Yeah,
think that they'll replace their computers, but they just won't.
yeah, that's a good clarification.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned before that you're a college student. So, can I ask, how do you balance all like the different projects and work life with college life? Because they just clash together. So,
That is so hard. It is so difficult. If I'm going to be honest with you, I think that the most important thing you can do is network in college. You can meet so many amazing people in college, but you also have to balance it out with the with schoolwork. So how do I balance it? I would say the number one tool is scheduling
mhm.
everything, and even the things that you don't think that you need to schedule, you need to think about. So, for example, I have to schedule a time to study. I have to schedule a time to have fun. When I start thinking about, um, when most people hear scheduling, they think, oh, well, this is when I'm going to go to this class. But you also need to think about when you're going to study. You have to think about when you're going to have fun, which is necessary. You have to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're going to take care of your body, when you're going to work out. These things are really important to think about, because when you're in college, and not only are you trying to do classes, but you're trying to meet new people and you're trying to start an organization, you have to think about how you're using your time very carefully. So when I start trying to manage um, my time, I think about all the things that I have to do or I want to do really badly, and I I start going the list like on a piece of paper, and I start so I have three like sections after I make the list. I have the most important things, the things that absolutely have to be done immediately. I have the things that are pressing, but not, today or this week or, just a little bit less pressing. And then I have the things that are not as important. And what you do is you want to grab those things that are the most important and schedule a time to do them. Pick the things that are at the very top of the list, find a time to do them. And then if you have more time, and then if you have time left over, then you go to the things that are less important and you schedule those as well. And then finally, you have the things that are actually not very important at the very end of the list. At the very rightmost, least important, and you might not even get to those because they're not important. So slicing up your time properly is absolutely, positively the most important thing to do in college. In economics, the first thing that we learn is that everybody. I think it's. Let me think. Let me think for a second how it goes. It's like a riddle.
Mm-hmm.
It's and you might get it because we've been talking about it. But it's what does what do all people have the same amount of? You know
Time.
what is Yeah, time. Like either you can be the richest person in the world, or you can be really poor, and you will have the same amount of time. And that's what defines us as people, is how we use our time. So when you're thinking about all the things that you want to do, just try and think about the things that are most important, and don't just think about what's most important, but also think about when you're going to do those things. You have to find a time to do these things, and you can also through this process kind of figure out what's not as important to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really important, especially in the college life. It's just so much to like
Yeah.
balance. So, as someone who just like a few years ago, maybe I'm assuming, got into quantum computing, quantum physics, imagine as if you are speaking to several rising quantum physicists or anyone who wishes to get some kind of start in this. What advice would you have for them to start in it?
So the first thing I would say is you can do it. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Anybody can do this. I grew up pretty poor, and I wasn't very good at math when I started school. Um, I would say that as long as you have your heart in the right place, that you can do it, but it's going to be a lot of work. So if you're interested in joining the field of quantum computing, or if you're just interested in learning about quantum mechanics, um, you know, you can do it. You just need to put your nose to the grindstone. There's a lot of different places for you to be in this field. You don't just have to do what I do. I decided to go through the physics route, which is arguably I think one of the more difficult routes to get to the quantum computing field.
Mhm.
And I say that because the software part of quantum computing is very well done right now. You can get online right now and go and work on a quantum computer at Google, at D-Wave. I mean, I'm sure there are more quantum computing companies with their computers available online. So you could study um, physics, you could study computer science, you could study computer engineering, you could do all these things. But I would say the number one thing that everything shares, and that unites all these things together,
Yeah.
is having like a pretty good understanding of mathematics. So do as well as you can in your mathematics courses. That doesn't mean that you couldn't be a sales associate, but even then, it would be better if you were good if you understood the material. And most of these things, it's hard to describe them with words, and I can't really tell you with words what superposition is. It's difficult. But with math, I can describe it perfectly. So if you want the number one most solid piece of advice for me, it would be to do well in your STEM courses, your science, technology, engineering, mathematics courses, and just don't give up. Even if you don't do well in your courses, you can still do it. I was not the best student in high school. I honestly didn't do very well in my math classes, but I decided to study physics anyways, and now I have a degree in it, and now I'm going to an excellent school for a master's degree. So I just keep pushing, and if you can, do the math well, but if you can't, then at least learn it at some point.
Yeah, that's great advice. So that is the end of our questions. Thank you so much, Dylan, for this. I really hope that this helps all quantum audiences that it reaches out to. And for anyone who's watching this, thank you for watching. And we will see